Okay, so that's one difference. What about this next difference between, say, the Inflate brush and the Magnify brush? These guys both do similar things. Let's keep the same model, but I'm going to bring a polysphere in. Press F on the keyboard to frame it. There's a question about whether elastic is close to form. It's not, as I understand it. Form is using clay, but I'd have to see the brushes in action. Okay. Reload it to get the original. Okay, let me see. So we're talking about Inflate versus Magnify. Here's Inflate. Okay, and now it's taking into account surface normal. Can anybody here explain what surface normal is? Remember, this is relevant when we get into samples too. Surface normal is important. And as Vincent's saying, it's basically the direction or the orientation that the polygon face is facing. Every polygon face has a normal, which is very, very important for 3D calculations, of course, and very important for our sculpting here. So what this is doing, this brush, is just takes the surface, and you have to bear with me here. I'm explaining something really simple. But this kind of thing is the difference between really mastering this program and just using it. So it's pulling the form up pretty much in one straight line according to its first sampling of it. But what you'll notice, just take a look at this line, this form. Okay, take a look at that versus what happens when I use the Magnify brush. Now, that's a beautiful curve. It doesn't always work under all circumstances, but you can see one of the elements of the algorithm isn't that it's just coming straight out. It's that it's really trying to grow and conform to as much of the spherical nature of that brush as possible. Whereas Inflate really was more like, a tumor just coming straight out of the skin. Just kind of a form pushing out. So as it was explained to me, the Magnify brush is really good when you're taking a character like, let's say, this guy right here. I'm going to go into solo mode. But one of the things that they were thinking is that you come in here with the Magnify brush and you just swell these forms. Now you got to do it a little bit more intelligently than I just did. But see, this is a different result. Let's see what happens if we get Inflate. I just pressed B, I, and then N. Okay, let's turn polyframe on. And you can see what happened with Inflate. It literally took those normals and just went straight out. That was it. It just went straight out until they all intersected each other and became this blob. So Inflate is the first primary brush. And then Magnify has this second level of intelligence that goes in and says, hey, let's see how we can kind of magnify all of this and keep the form with some sort of integrity. And then I'll tell you something you probably don't know, because I'm not sure how much of this got released. But this was back when gravity was developed. And now you might think, oh, well, you know, what does it have to do with gravity? Well, think of what gravity's doing. Somebody who puts gravity into a program, they got something in their mind. What are they trying to do? How cool would it be if you had real-world materials inside of ZBrush that behaved like real-world things? Like you had actual physical Chavant, actual physical, you know, wed clay that moved like them. I'm not saying that's possible at this stage. I'm not saying that's in the plan or anything. I'm just saying that would be awesome. And this was developed around the time that, you know, I remember thinking, let's really try to get some real world behavior into this. So Magnify is this other element that just has a little bit more intelligence around how the form is modified. And I'm sure that we're only at stage 1 there. I'm sure there's more to it. Okay, now something I found, in fact, let's see. Was it this? Yeah. I'm hovering over Blob brush, and I'm pressing, you know, Control. And I just read this actually today. I've read this probably a million times, but today I read it and I was like, oh, it's like the Magnify brush. What the heck do they mean by that? Because it never seemed like it was like the Magnify brush to me. But check this out. It is a Magnify brush. Same size, right? Like, let's go somewhere in that same vicinity. Very similar, right? But it's treating the polygons differently. So it's still conforming to a circle, but instead of with the Magnify brush where it's very clearly analyzing the surface and kind of trying to make that surface conform to a nice, well, conform to its original shape as much as possible. The Blob brush does something else entirely. And part of that algorithm is that it treats the polygons at the center of that effect and really just stretches those guys out, trying to make sure, trying to do whatever it can to get a lot of polygons right here so it can describe this kind of bump. So if we were to look at this transition, inflate, magnify, and pump, inflate just comes kind of straight out, and then with the second round, then it might come out like this and like that. Magnify comes out and really conforms to a nice surface. Pump goes straight in to giving this really hard edge and really throwing the form over the edge.